This is Dateline News and Conversation. Before I begin, I want to encourage all of you who are watching this video to please send an email to the email address you see below to be able to join the Friends of Crimea, Friends of Russia Telegram channel, where every day and all day they aggregate the latest important news about Russia in international affairs, and everything that's happening with Russia in terms of the BRICS Plus organization. Now, tonight, I have a very special guest. He lives near Budapest, and he is the head of a peace movement in Hungary. I want to welcome Endre Simo to the show. Endre, welcome.
Thank you very much, Regis, for your invitation, and I salute our viewer.
Well, I'm very happy to have you on the show. What I would like to have you first tell me is a little bit about your background. You're a peace activist. Were you raised that way? Was your family very progressive? I'd also like to know about some of your background in terms of your work, professional work, and a little personal information about your family. So tell me a little bit about that background.
Okay, I am a 70-year-old Hungarian citizen. I was born in Kolozsvár, Cluj, the capital of Transylvania. My father was a communist worker. He spent 9 years in the prisons of fascist Romania. He was arrested together with his partner, Donka, for their illegal labor movement activities. My half-brother, Willy, was born in prison, and his mother died in childbirth because she was not treated. I completed my primary school studies in Budapest and Rome. In Rome because my father was appointed ambassador, and I grew up there. I graduated from the Karl Marx University of Economics in Budapest, majoring in international relations. In Nice, I pursued postgraduate studies at the European Institute of Advanced International Studies with a federalist spirit, and then earned a doctorate in world economy. My topic was the European communities. According to my qualification, I am an international economist. I worked as a journalist at the Hungarian news agency, MTI. I was correspondent in Lisbon, Rome, and South America, based in Buenos Aires. After the collapse of socialism in Hungary, when I no longer had the opportunity to continue my work as a journalist, I looked for the meaning of my life in social work. In 2022, I was one of the initiators of the establishment of the European Social Forum. And in my country, I founded the Hungarian Social Forum. In 2014, the Hungarian Community for Peace Association, of which I am the president. That is, in this capacity, as an expert on international issues, I am participating in today's conversation with you. Greetings to you and the viewers.
Wow, that's a very impressive background, Endre. Now I would like to ask you about your activism and your peace work. Tell me about the organization that you are the president of. Were you also the founder? How many members do you have, and what kind of activities are you involved in?
We are a modest association, and our financial resources are even more modest than our staff. Our membership is of 48 civilians and organizations. But compared to our power, our influence is not bad. On our websites, we deliver our messages to thousands of people every day. And there was a period when 1 million people read our information about the conflict in Ukraine. That is 10% of Hungary's population. Our main task is to inform people correctly. I guess I don't need to detail how much there is a need for factual, correct, clear information in the Western reality, in which all Eastern news sources that do not serve the so-called reality according to the taste of NATO and the EU have been banned. As it is known, Hungary is a member of the Western Alliance system. Disinformation and censorship also work in our country, even if it is not so spectacular as elsewhere. The state media and the liberal mainstream media both present the events one-sidedly. The Facebook, VK, and WordPress pages of the Hungarian Community for Peace, on the other hand, try to provide information from the available Eastern and Western sources. There is a particularly high interest in our information, which is kept silent by both the pro-government and the liberal socialist opposition media. The most recent example is BRICS. We were the only ones who factually reported on the Johannesburg summit, the expansion of BRICS with Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, and provided data on the new international reality that will emerge after BRICS expansion. It is good to see that people are very, very interested in the transformation of the world. They are very interested about what the new world will be like, in which the BRICS will be one of the poles of power, and what will happen to the part of the world that insists on the unipolar world order, of which Hungary is currently a part. Civil diplomacy is another important part of our activities. We have built relationships with the embassies of several countries in Budapest in order to facilitate the political settlement of conflicts. Today, of course, we consider achieving a just peace in Ukraine to be our primary task. We are discussing this with, among others, the Russians and the Apostolic Nuncio of the Holy See in Hungary. We have a fruitful working relationship with them. Unfortunately, the Americans turn a blind eye to our inquiries, even though we wanted to share our opinion on the peaceful settlement with them. I will tell you frankly, we want to have a dialogue with them so that they are not caught off guard when Zelensky, Ukraine, throws in the towel and they are forced to sit down at the negotiating table with the Russians. We are cooperating with Austrian political organization on the topic of neutrality. We teamed up with them to protect Austria's neutrality enshrined in the Constitution, which some people want to give up and follow the example of Finland to join NATO. And we want to achieve that Hungary also becomes neutral and does not belong to any military bloc. On the initiative of the Hungarian Community for Peace, the Forum for Peace movement was founded last year, which offers a new opportunity for social cooperation even wider than the community for peace. The great virtue of both is that they mobilize people to defend Hungary's peace and sovereignty, regardless of worldview or party affiliation. Parties also participate in the Peace Forum. On July 26, together with 10 organizations, we held a unified peace demonstration in Budapest. It was our first common event. It was important even with the participation of some hundreds people.
Okay. Well, that's impressive. Very impressive, Andre. I read a speech that you gave. I'm not sure if it was on that day and that occasion in Budapest, but you made some pretty powerful demands. I'd like you to explain each of them one at a time. This is the first one that I read. You demanded from the government the immediate termination of financing of the neo-Nazi Ukrainian regime and the veto of arms deliveries to the Ukraine army. So Hungary has been doing that. Tell me a little bit more about this demand and who heard it.
Yes, the Community for Peace considers the Ukrainian political system to be a perverted anti-people Nazi-type regime. If it were not for that, he would spare the lives of his own people instead of taking his vigorous men to the slaughterhouse against the Russians. This regime not only massacred thousands of Russians in Donbass between 14 and 22, but also deprived all national minorities living in Ukraine, including the Transcarpathian Hungarians, of their minority rights, including the right to use their mother tongue. It divided the ethnic groups living in Ukraine into indigenous and non-indigenous nations, divided the people into dominant and subordinate nationalities. In the name of the superior race, he began exterminating the Russians, as the German Nazis did the Jews. And at that time, what kind of twisted morality can tell a government to financially support such a regime? We demand that the Hungarian government, immediately stop funding the Zelenskys. I think that there is a certain audience and acceptation from government part, but we don't see yet the concrete result.
Edgar, this is the first time that I have heard that Hungarians have been persecuted, exterminated in Ukraine. Is that what's happening?
Yes, Kiev, the Zelenskys are using our compatriots in the Transcarpathian region as gun fodders. We have some hundreds people from Transcarpathia dead in the fights at the front against Russians. But we don't see that the Hungarian government is defending the interest of these people. So we are one of the few people in Hungary to intervene at the defense of the lives of our brothers living in the Transcarpathian region. Yes, it's a tragedy, Regis, but this is the reality.
Edgar.
It is
Well,
not good. It is not good, but is a reality.
yeah. I thought it was just Russians who were being persecuted, not allowed to speak their language, closing the Russian Orthodox churches, monasteries. I didn't realize that this persecution was also happening to others, such as Hungarians. I think a lot of people who are listening to this will be surprised. Wow. I want to ask you this. You started out in your introduction talking about wanting to have peace talks where Kiev would sit down with Russia. My personal opinion is the United States needs to sit down with Russia because I believe the United States has been behind this for decades, and certainly since 2014, when they funded, commanded, orchestrated the coup in Kiev. And so Zelensky is not really the autonomous president of Ukraine. He's a puppet of the United States. I'd like your comments on that. You can disagree with me, but I'm really interested in how someone from Hungary would look at that situation.
I think that the only way to resolve this conflict is to accept the Russian security demands of 15 December 21. As I see, there is a certain tendency at least to accept them partially. Of course, not from side of the NATO and US at this moment, but from other sides, for example, from the Holy See, and also Mr. Orban, our Prime Minister, and also from Turkey's side. So let me say that I see a certain tendency to changing the situation, or this opposition, radical opposition, and the non-acceptation from Western side of the legitimate security demands of Russia. I think that regarding Hungary, Orban wants to prevent NATO from dragging Hungary into a war with Russia. It does not allow arms shipments to Ukraine via Hungary, but it voted for the European Union arms shipments and financial aid to Ukraine. Unlike Poland, it did not allow the United States to turn Hungary into a military base, but allowed it to increase the presence of NATO troops. While he entered into beneficial energy cooperation with Rosatom for the expansion of the Paks power plant, he voted for all sanctions against Russia, except for the import of Russian gas and oil. The Hungarian government did not stop directly financing Kiev either. Orban does not pursue a neutral policy, but a dual policy. He maneuvers between Shila and Karidi. He cannot do otherwise, as NATO membership obliges him. He does not want to leave NATO, although the thought may have crossed his mind. On the day after the Russian military intervention in Ukraine, Viktor Orban described the Russian move as an aggression And since then, he has not changed his opinion in public, although he no longer voiced it. Instead, it is regularly voiced by the President of the Republic, Ms. Katalin Novak, who recently visited Kiev and assured the Kiev leadership of her support. I see that Orban is aware of it. Ukraine cannot win in this war because Russia is stronger than it. And if Ukraine loses, if I want to say that Orban is preparing for the future, what will happen after Ukraine is demilitarized and becomes neutral? The neutralization of Ukraine would also mean the defeat of NATO. I would set in motion processes. It would set in motion processes, especially in Eastern Europe, that could possibly lead to the disintegration of NATO. For example, Hungary would become neutral. It is in this context that I interpret the meeting between Hungarian Prime Minister and Turkish President Erdogan on August 20 in Budapest. Both of them perceive that it is impossible to end the conflict in Ukraine without at least partial satisfaction of Russian security demands. Erdogan is particularly interested in whether Orban sees a security risk in a possible partial spatial agreement with Putin. Orban is of the opinion that Russia does not threaten Hungary. Erdogan sees that without meeting Russian demands, not only the conflict in Ukraine cannot be ended, but also the Black Sea grain export agreement cannot be restored. Both NATO members are forced, if they do not want to risk their economic interests with Russia, to act more actively among the Western powers in order to come to an agreement with Moscow, to a compromise. Regis, that's here the future I see, not the immediate future, but I don't know, the immediate or the future for after tomorrow. But it's sure that this is the way, because there doesn't exist other peaceful possibility to the solution of this problem and to renewal our world in something different.
Okay. I want to pursue this line of thinking a little bit further. I too would love to see a peaceful solution to this. However, being an American citizen, and a filmmaker, I have been coming to Russia since 2016 and have been living here since March of 2020. And my focus has been trying to counter the American narrative about all things Russia, Russian people, and President Putin. Not many people are listening, but I keep trying. But as an American, what I do know, and I think people need to know, it has been the published foreign policy of the United States for decades now, repeated by the Heritage Foundation, the RAND Corporation, and other powerful think tanks in Washington, D.C., that Russia needs to be defeated. You've got an American president who's saying that. You've got Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, saying that. You've got General Austin and General Miley, who are saying the same thing.
I am losing the contact with you. I didn't hear the last 4-5 periods. I am listening to you. I am hearing you now very well.
Okay. What I was saying, as an American citizen, I've been trying to counter the American narrative
Mhm.
about all things Russian. Everything
Yeah.
about Russia is evil. But as an American and a filmmaker, I am acutely aware that it has been America's foreign policy goal towards Russia to take Russia down, to defeat Russia, to get rid of Putin, and to steal its resources. I wonder if if you really think that the United States is willing or ready to sit down and talk about peace and Russian security needs. Do you really think that the United States is ready for that or is willing to do that?
Regis, I think that sooner or later the West will be forced to negotiate, including the United States, the leader of Western Alliance. I think that also the military intervention was initiated by Russia. The antecedents and root causes of the military intervention should not be overlooked. I could list the facts for a long time, from the 89 agreement in Malta, according to which NATO will not expand an inch to the east, to the non-fulfillment of the Minsk agreements, to the transformation of Ukraine into a NATO bridgehead, and to the Western rejection of Russian security demands of December 15, 21. You see, the essence of the matter is that the West did not want and still does not want to recognize Russia's right to security, but wants to strengthen its own security at the expense of Russia's security. This is unsustainable and inadmissible, since security is one and indivisible, and no one has the right to enforce their own security at the expense of others. Based on my knowledge, I can state that the plan was formulated in certain circles of the American deep state to dismember Russia and gain control over its natural resources. Ukraine is a means to an end, but they have run into Russian wall. They took a terrible responsibility by sacrificing the lives of hundreds and thousands of Ukrainians for their selfish goals. They committed an unpardonable sin by not allowing the Ukrainian people to live in peace and on good terms with both the East and the West, but wanted to appropriate it from the South and turn it into a rallying ground against Russia. Neither I nor the Community for Peace support war, but we understand why it exploded. There can be, and there are, historical situations in which a preventive step must be taken in order to avoid a bigger problem, another great patriotic war similar to World War II on the territory of Russia. In my opinion, the future of Ukraine is neutrality. The Hungarian Community for Peace recommended this already in 2014, about 10 years ago. I confess, not only for the sake of Ukraine, but also for our own sake, so that Hungary also gets rid of the only military bloc that has survived historically. I see the way out of the conflict in the fact that the Western powers realize that they cannot defeat Russia, nor can they undermine it economically with sanctions. They will be forced to give up Ukraine, Regis. And at the same time, they will have to start serious negotiations on the fulfillment of Russia's security demands. This will mark the beginning of the transformation of the European security system, with the replacement of confrontation with cooperation. The time has not yet come. At the NATO summit in Vilnius, they said, "We do not and will never recognize Russia's illegitimate annexations, including Crimea." In my view, the Western categorical imperative will change depending on how Russia pursues its threefold goal of Ukraine: denazification, demilitarization, and neutralization. I repeat, Regis, sooner or later the West will be forced to negotiate. I am convinced of that.
Well, that has been my hope as well. I really have hope for that, Andre.
We are optimistic. We are optimistic.
Yeah. I want to ask you a couple of more questions. First of all, you say we, and I know you're not just talking about your peace movement. I think you're talking about Hungarian people. Do you think that you have expressed the desire, the will, and the demands? Do you think that you are representing what the majority of you Hungarians feel?
I didn't understand well your question. Can you repeat it?
I will rephrase it. Do you think that most people in Hungary are against this NATO involvement, Hungary's involvement in Ukraine? I know you do, but do you think that when you speak that you represent most Hungarian people?
It is difficult to say if the majority of the Hungarians are now against NATO. I would tell that I prefer telling that the majority of Hungarians probably are familiarizing himself with the idea of a neutral Hungary. They wait for further changements, not only on the battlefield in Ukraine, but also worldwide. They are looking the changements arriving in the international scene regarding the BRICS community, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Eurasia Economic Union, and so on. And they are feeling that something new is born. I think that Ukraine is a catalyzer of these worldwide changements. And of course, Russia tactic, Russia strategy, and not only Russia, but of China, India, and other emerging powers, is to change gradually but surely the situation in the world and create a multipolar system, refusing the unipolar US dominating system over the world. So this process needs time. But if we have the force to do it, to implement it, it will arrive sooner or later. I think that our slogan is peace movement, maybe more tolerance and passions than revolutionary explosion and overtaking on the world. No, no. This is a process which has to be go forward, and concretizing the results. So I think that we here in Hungary, we have the task to help this process of transformation. And of course, we are all interested in the neutrality of our neighbor, Ukraine, because the neutralization of Ukraine could have as result also the neutrality of our own country, Hungary. And we would like to have a neutral Hungary because we need to live in good relations with both East and West. That's enough of wars. We have lost 2 world wars. First one, losing our 2/3 of our territory with Trianon Pact imposed by the imperialistic powers of West, and this treaty was not accepted by Russia. And in the Second World War, we have even lost more territory. And we are living on the path of the historical wars. We are living in the center of Europe, between East and West. We don't want more war. We want to live in peace. And our aspiration is to build good relations with both East and West. Look, we are very pragmatic as this movement. We see that 80% of the Hungarian commerce is done with the European Union, while the supply of energy carriers, gas, oil, comes from Russia. So you see that we are linked directly to both sides. We are interested economically, financially, humanly, to both sides. And we want to maintain these relations, but not in subordinated sense. We don't want nor NATO, nor other military bloc. We want to live sovereignly. We want to accept the idea of BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and others, of the equal rights, the respect to each others, the non-subordination to others. We want to decide ourselves for our future. And we want to develop ourselves together with others, commonly helping each others without imposing ourselves to others. And we don't want to accept the imposition of our others to us. That is our philosophy. I think that this kind of world will arrive. I don't know if I will see in my life the result of this new world, but I hope so. Why not?
Endre, I really appreciate your thoughts. And I also share your hope about the process that is underway across the globe with the BRICS movement, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but most recently BRICS. You mentioned it a couple of times. You mentioned it in your opening statements. BRICS has just expanded. They will expand again next year. And the BRICS is all about everything you just articulated: the respect and sovereignty and self-determination of every nation, large or small. The BRICS is demanding the strict observance of international law and the principles of the United Nations Charter. They're even demanding that it be reorganized. The BRICS is also wanting to see not confrontation, but diplomacy, not exploitation, but the development of all countries working together. It is a new world that offers hope to all peoples. And I would say, especially to peoples in those countries that are quote unquote underdeveloped, treating them as one and equal. My concern has been, will those powerful people that control the United States foreign policy and control all of the European Union and NATO, will they recognize their rightful place as one among equals? Or will they, recognizing they've lost their hegemony, they've lost their domination of the planet, and do the unthinkable and take us all down in a nuclear holocaust? I just interviewed Ray McGovern, former CIA analyst from the United States, who said he's more concerned now that those, he called them crazies, in the White House will do the unthinkable. And last night, I interviewed Scott Ritter together with Vladimir Kozin from Moscow, who's an expert on all things nuclear, treaties, weapons, as is Scott Ritter. And Vladimir said, I was surprised. He said Russia now needs to deploy its nuclear weapons in Kaliningrad, as they've done in Belarus, and be ready to use them, not preemptively, but in order to preserve the Russian Federation when they feel threatened. I was surprised to hear that. Neither one of them expressed much hope that there could be peace, because Russia no longer trusts the United States or NATO about anything. And so here we are. Andre.
Yeah, here we are, but this is the present situation. It is not the future. History didn't end, and we will have many surprises already. We will have many surprises here. I think that we don't have to be pessimistic. I am sure that nuclear war will not be Neither US and nor Russia want that. I think that the human sense is excluding a nuclear war, which would be the end of the humanity in the earth. I think that, of course, there are movements, there are tactics, there are strategies of defense in Kaliningrad, in Belarus, and so on. But we have also some important results, diplomatic results, and agreements between the superpowers, the nuclear superpowers. And I see that also if the situation is not good, it's a tense situation. And there is a great willingness from Western side to win the war in Ukraine, to defeat strategically Russia. I think that the nuclear war we can exclude. No, we will not have a nuclear war in the world. I think that the interest of the deep state in the United States and in other Western countries will understand that there is no other way that compromise with the other side to maintain some important power, international power positions, and some important economical positions in the world. I think that US has a great future. I repeat the idea and the declaration of this of Mr. Putin. I think that the two superpowers will achieve an agreement, but it is necessary to arrive to that point, and the key of this arrival is the solution of the Ukrainian conflict with weapons, unfortunately. But I think that Kiev will be defeated, and other power and other leadership in Kiev will start negotiations on the Russians' demands with Moscow. And from other side, it is important also the international changemen. You mentioned BRICS and so on. These two things parallelly will conduce us to the table of negotiations with the United States. Probably not with Mr. Biden, I don't know whom with, but I trust in the intelligence of the American think tanks and also the deep state circles who don't have only economical interest, but probably are able to look in larger human sense with a worldwide capacity to perceive the necessity of this earth we are living together on. That's a hope, as we see.
Well, I don't just hope. You and I are both working towards that end. Um, I want to say this: I will not be skeptical or pessimistic about what I see as a new world emerging, and I don't want to be skeptical or pessimistic that those countries that are now part of BRICS, plus another 20 or more who want to join, I am not going to be skeptical or pessimistic that because of previous history and difficulties between these countries, they will not, with the goals and the aspirations of BRICS, fall into the same trap they felt before. Because I believe, and I do want to believe, that all of those countries aspire to live in that kind of world where everyone is respected as an equal and everyone benefits from the collective work of all, which
Yeah,
is a paradigm, a new paradigm, completely different than the present one we've been living under for so long. Um, Andre, I want to give you the opportunity before we finish for any final remarks that you would like to make. I've really very much appreciated this conversation, my friend.
thank you very much, Regis. I don't know what to say to complete my ideas. I think that this is not only a question of peace, but really peace in Ukraine that will be achieved. But as you have told, it is a question of the transformation of whole the world. Uh, Look, we have many, many problems in the world. Poverty, subordination, gap between poor and rich, and so on. We have our country with about 9,600,000 inhabitants. 3 million of them live below the minimum wage. $9 a day. Many people are starving, including hundreds of thousands of children who go to bed with rumbling stomachs. Poverty is particularly high in the eastern areas of the country. A characteristic accompanying phenomenon of the social state is the increasing crime and the spread of deviant forms of behavior, such as drug consumption. Every year in Hungary, hundreds of people freeze to death in the open air and in unheated apartments. Since the regime change from socialism to capitalism, nearly 10,000 people have died in hypothermia. Social inequality shows a growing trend. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. The peace policy of the Orban government is not matched by a similarly positive social policy. So I want to say that we have many, many problems, common problems to resolve. And the only way to resolve these social problems and the problems regarding the development of each countries, merely the African, Asian, and South American ones, suppose the way BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization are taking. Equal rights, respect of the sovereignty, no hierarchy, no subordination, but really cooperation with equal rights for common benefits. I think this is the way. We don't have to create a new philosophy. We have to accept the importance of the moral sense of cooperation and change the world of confrontation in a world of cooperation. This is the future of the humanity we want here in Hungary, and I hope with your country, the US, that will be convinced of the importance of this way. I have a great consideration of your former country, the United States, from the War of Independence and from the Declaration of Human Rights. This is a very important result for the humanity. This was a gift for the humanity. And I am convinced that the United States, the good feeling of the United States, the good people of the United States didn't forget this.